Welcome to the Success Blueprint with Greider and Peterson team. We are glad you guys are back with us. We're happy to have Brandon Lee with us today. Grateful that he's been able to join us. Tons of experience in development. Known Brandon not for terribly long, but for a few years. We've known each other and just really impressed with the way he conducts his business. I know he loves to travel. I know he loves soccer. He coaches soccer since he has so much free time, which he does a lot though. So we're glad that you're here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And so I guess start out, just give people a little bit of background on you and start as far back as you want to go.
Well, I always like to start. I was born and raised here, and I love that. I love being from Idaho. I was a Teresa Bunker Bobcat from elementary school, and Idaho Falls Tiger for from high school. And I loved growing up here. Thought it was a fantastic experience. Went away for college. Got my MBA at Darden on the East Coast. And so first jobs after my master's degree were in the Midwest, and but with the first opportunity that I had to come back to Idaho, my wife and I jumped at it.
Okay.
And so we came back here in 2013, and been here ever since, and love it, and have no intent to go anywhere else.
Where in the Midwest were you?
So after I went to Darden for graduate school, and at that point, I kind of knew for me that I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And so as I was looking at things, there was really two choices that would go in completely different directions. Prior to business school, I'd been part of a very successful startup in biotech that got acquired by a publicly traded company. And that happened just as I was leaving to go to grad school. And so I had an offer to go to Merck Pharmaceuticals and do mergers and acquisitions for them, and essentially go on the other side of that coin where I'd go out and find the small businesses to go and acquire. So we were looking at either doing that or go and do real estate development for a Target Corporation. And so we chose Target, and we went to Minneapolis. And largely the reason is I felt like if I could go and learn all the important parts of real estate development, that's something I could eventually go and do without having to rely on a scientist. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to add value without having to rely on a scientist. Not that scientists are bad, because they're fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's just the direction that I wanted to go. And so I did that, and I did site selection and land acquisition for Target Corporation for about 6 years.
Wow.
And then at that point...
that was probably a huge experience.
It was massive, because I joined in 2007, okay? And in 2006, Target had done... they were on this massive growth peak where they, when I accepted the role there, they're like, we just built 120 stores across the country all in 1 year. You're going to be part of this team that's doing all these massive projects. And so they went from 120 something to 3.
Wow.
Right. And so because when 07 hit and we had that massive crash, I'd been with Target for about 6 months before I thought I was going to have to start looking for a new role. And because across the country, right?
Of course.
Real estate had come to a screeching halt, as had a lot of things. But fortunately, I was able to stay there, and I learned a lot. They put me into this development program that they had at Target, which was fantastic. I saw lots of different aspects of development, as well as property management and corporate real estate, and how to manage existing portfolios. So there was just this kind of wealth of rotations that I was able to get there. And what I really liked about Target is every project they do a joint venture with a very experienced and successful real estate developer. So I got to partner with developers across the country and really kind of pick gold nuggets on how they, what are the best practices that they would institute within their own real estate firms. And I would just log these in my head, right? Okay, I like how they do this. Okay, I like how they do that. Target is very process heavy, which you have to be when you're doing that many.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're trying to have an engine of that many stores, right? Now
process and
they ramped
is everything,
up,
right?
And as things came back, out of that downturn in the cycle, I got to I finally convinced, if you know a little bit about Target's history, so Target's very suburban oriented, or they were for years and years.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I was able to convince the head of real estate, who was my boss, to say, hey, we really should do some of these really urban Targets. Let's get in and buy some of these. Let's buy something cool and turn it into a Target. And for the first couple of years there, they were like, no, that's not what we do, you know? And eventually, though, I just kind of kept on this thing. And finally, they were like, okay, go try one. I was like, okay. And so we bought a bank in downtown Seattle that was like a block from Pike's Place Market, if you're familiar with Seattle.
Definitely.
And so they're like, okay, what are you going to do? Okay,
what's it going to look
we're
like?
going to turn it into a 3-level Target with escalators and cartilators and all. So I got, they allowed me some flexibility to get creative, and we had to get super creative on like deliveries and delivery trucks and all these things to try to make it. And I had to go to this was part of a 35-floor condominium, right? So I had all these residents above me, and I had to go convince them that a Target was going to be okay and it was actually going to be a benefit for them, because then, and then we had like residents asking me, well, can we have a pass to go in at like 2 a.m. when I need a gallon of milk and stuff like that? And I was like, maybe.
Right?
We'll
see what we can do.
Exactly. And that's what it was. It was like, okay, this has never been done, so what can we do to go make this happen? And it ended up being super successful. So they're like, go do it again. So we bought this old historic building in downtown Portland, turned into a huge success. And we built one down at LA Live in LA. And so it was just really fun to go and do something different with such a big organization like Target.
To have the backing, but to give you the freedom to do some of that, that's pretty...
It was fun.
You're good at convincing people then.
Well, and I think they were looking, right? For me, it's about, you can always ask, but if you don't ask, you never get the answer yes, right? And so for me, it's about asking the right question and being lucky at the right time that Target was ready for something new, right? They needed to continue to expand their portfolio, and they recognized through the crash and everything that they'd actually overbuilt, right? And so that downturn, while they were trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we continue to reach, what is, they viewed as the target guest, and city Targets was the way to go.
When you're working with these developers and things, and when you're talking about that, they would come in and work with developers, what's maybe some of the consistency or the traits that you'd see that these developers had? There had to be something that you were, like a pattern, that the ones that you enjoyed working with the most.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And for me, as I reflect back on something like that, I think probably one of the most consistent things was this attitude that they had, that if someone said no, right, they would find a way to get around it, right? So if a problem arose, because real estate development is full of challenges and problems. It really is a challenging business and world to have a lot of success. And so if you get easily discouraged, then it's really not for you, right? But if you're used to having 100 no's before you get a yes, and you're okay with that, then it could be, right? And so I think that was probably the most consistent, is like, okay, here's a huge challenge. Okay, great. You welcome the challenge. Let's figure out how to solve it. It's more of an excitement to problem solve. And just having kind of that attitude, instead of like, oh, well, I guess we can't do that, right? It's yes, we can, right?
Yeah.
There's a way to yes. There's a way to yes, and it might be this, right? It might not be straight, but it's kind of that willingness to continue to problem solve until you get to somewhere that's acceptable, and you have to have that willingness to pivot too, because you may think it's over here, but ultimately you're going to get here, but you're still going to get to an acceptable solution, right?
Yeah.
So I think willingness to pivot and a willingness to never just accept that someone is telling you no.
Right.
I love that. I think that's so true in anything, right? I mean, knowing you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you had to have that somewhat instilled in you, because there's always roadblocks, there's always challengers, there's always people telling you no throughout the process.
Right.
Anytime you're trying to begin or start anything. So that's pretty important. I do see, it's funny, we've seen on our team, there's people that really, even younger or just starting out, it seems like there's just, I don't know if it's innate, but there's some people that just kind of have that naturally, and some people do not.
Yeah.
And some people, they just want to check in, do their hours and leave. And people try to get into something where that's not the case, and then it doesn't quite work out. And so I think there is some learning to that, but I don't know, what have you found? Have you found people that's kind of natural to people, or can people learn that?
I think that it is both, but I think that if it's something that if it's not innate, it does take a lot of effort to learn that. And I just think that's probably personality driven. Yeah. I guess I grew up like my mom, from a very early age, right? So I'll tell you a quick story, right? Would always say, well, what's the worst that they can tell you? If the answer is no, then who cares? You're in the same spot before. If they tell you no, it's no different than where you're at right now, so you might as well ask, right?
It's true.
So I remember being 12 years old, and I went to a fireside for church, and Jason Buck, who had just won the Super Bowl at the time, right? He was with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he just won the Super Bowl, and he was there as the main speaker. So he came and he gave this great, devotional / fireside evening. And at the end of it, I just waited till everyone had gone. And I went up to him and I asked him if he would give me a ride home back to my house. Because in my mind, I had my mom say, well, what's the worst you can do is tell you no, right?
How old were you at this time?
I was 12.
Oh, no way.
And so he looks at me, and I remember him looking at me like, I guess.
You don't have a ride?
So he gets in. I get in his van, and I give him the directions back to my house. He takes me home, and he pulls up at my house, and my mom and dad see Jason Buck get out of the car, and they're like, "How in the?" And I told my mom, she's like, "Well, I didn't really mean that. The worst he could do is tell me no."
Dude, one of the best lessons ever.
And so I've kind of had that, throughout my life, and I tell the same thing to my kids. Well, what's the worst, right? And if the worst is no, go for it,
right?
So
yeah. Well, what's cool is you can tell that you've taken some of these traits and things like that, and I mean, just being in planning meeting with you, yesterday of a subdivision that we're working on, and it's fun to just see the way that you're thinking, more of a mastermind with engineers instead of just letting them do it and being like, oh yeah, okay, so that's what we have and that's what we're going to do. And it was fun to just kind of dig into that and just the little minute details that make a huge, difference in it. And so anyway, you can tell that you've picked up a lot of these different things and consistencies. And anyway, it's pretty awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think, to me, that's a lesson I think that I probably took from my time at Target that stuck with me. And that is when even if you're called to quote unquote kind of lead the effort or lead the group, when you have a team, everybody truly does have things to offer, and sometimes you just have to draw it out, right? And I have to always remind myself I'm not the only one who has a great idea, right? I might have an idea, but somebody else like you and I can sit there, take whatever my idea was, and make it 10 times better if we sit and talk it out and think through it. Yeah. And you pull out. That experience and expertise that people can bring to the table when you have a good team around you.
Is that something that you've always had, being open-minded and learning from others, or is that something that you've had to learn on a curve? Or
I think it's mostly been natural for me. I've never felt like that I'm any better, and I don't think that I'm any better or any smarter than anybody else. And so I really like to hear what other people are thinking, and because I do think you just make things so much better when you get people involved. Plus, then they feel like they're engaged too, and now they have some skin in the game, and they know that they're valued, right? When I take somebody's answer, I'm like, that's fantastic. Let's roll with that, and then we can continue to delve into it, and I just think that recognition, of your team is so important if you really want it to be a team, right? Yeah. I think you can you can silo things, and I've seen different leaders do that where they're like, stay in your lane. This is your silo. Be very good at that, but don't get out of your lane. And I completely disagree with that. I just think the team approach and bringing people together, getting all the silos, if you will, together in the room, like engineers, architects, construction, right? Like in our meeting yesterday, right? We had several disciplines, I think, sitting around the table that all had ability to, give and make impact on what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think you always end up with the best work product when you do that.
I hadn't really thought about that part of it before, but when people are heard like that, there's so much more wanting to make it work.
Yeah.
Right? They feel like they're being heard. They feel like their ideas are being listened to. They just have, like you said, more skin in the game, but it's just, they want it to work at that point. And so instead of, oh, we can't do that, or oh, we can't do that, it's like, well, let's see how we can make it work instead of just throwing up the roadblocks. So I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're at Target for how long?
6 years.
6 years. Okay. Man, that was pretty impactful 6 years.
Yeah, it was really good, and at that, I'd been there for about 6 years, and, we had kind of thought, to be honest, there were times throughout that period where we're like, man, this is such a great gig, right? I enjoyed going to work every day. I loved who I worked with. I had great teams, continued to have great responsibilities and ability to kind of develop within my career. So I didn't ever feel like I was getting stagnant. The last year that I'd been at Target, actually, they had decided they were going to enter Canada, and they'd never done that before, and they'd never gone quote unquote international, right?
Yeah.
And so the CFO of Darden of Target was an alum of Darden as well.
Okay.
And he invited me to be on a team to kind of evaluate this potential acquisition. And so they ended up buying this company called Zellers in Canada, and it was, I can't even remember now, it was a few $1 billion, right? So this massive acquisition, and we had 8 months to go and visit like every nook and cranny of Canada. And we visited like 230 different stores to pick which ones that we wanted to actually buy in this pool.
Yeah. Wow.
And we had to recast, like we ended up selecting, I think, 130 something. It was the biggest, it was so, like when I started that, I was like, we're going to do what in that much time? But it was so fun to be part of something. And I felt like anytime that there's, it's one of those things, it's like, I can do anything for 12 months, right?
Yeah.
I can do anything for 12 months, right? But you kind of got to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But that was such a momentous effort to do that and to get all these stores ready for opening in a new country. And so that was really great learning. That was kind of my last year there. And then at that time, a friend of mine, who was working for Riverbend Holdings here in Idaho Falls, they were looking for somebody who had some real estate development experience, like my background, and they wanted somebody with Idaho ties. And so I ended up coming back to work for Riverbend and for Frank Vandersloot. And Frank was such an amazing mentor. I remember one of my first discussions with him, he was kind of laying out this vision of things that he wanted to go do within his real estate team. And I was like, Frank, that's awesome, but I haven't done hardly any of those things.
Yeah.
And he was like, great, you're smart, you'll learn it, right? And that was it was kind of a double-edged sword, because I was appreciative that he trusted me that I could learn it and that I was smart enough to learn it, but there was also this expectation, you will learn it, right? And don't screw it up, right?
Yeah.
And so that was great, because I had come from this, power center, very retail heavy focused development, and jumped into, student housing and multifamily housing and single family housing and industrial, right? And grocery anchored shopping centers. And so we really kind of spanned the asset class. And I love that, because again, so many, there's variables, I think, that kind of transcend and will go to any asset class. But each one does have some of its specifics that you need to try to figure out. And so that was just fantastic learning my time with them. And after I'd been there for a few years, had a different friend call up who was ready. He was on the private equity side, and she was building a team, and asked me if I would move to San Francisco and do this, help her build this team. And they were taking a fitness brand, and they were going to blow it up, and through the private equity numbers, and go big, and everyone's gonna, it's going to be crazy, right? And I was like, that sounds fantastic, but there's no way I'm moving to San Francisco. I love Idaho way too much.
Yeah.
And so I kind of passed on that. And she called me back though about 4 months later and said, I cannot find who I want. She's like, what if you could do it from Idaho? And then I was like, oh, okay.
There you go.
And so I joined her team, and that was a great experience. And we went in. There was a lot of capital backing and started to really grow this business. And then again, I was very comfortable. So this was a good lesson for me too, because I was doing a role where it's just very comfortable.
Yeah.
Right?
How long had you been working with Frank at that time?
I'd been there for about 3 years.
Okay.
And so I just left to go and do this, and I've been doing this for a few years, and it was super comfortable. But there was just nothing really pushing me to, again, I was making good California money living here in Idaho.
Yeah.
Really I was able to kind of call the shots and do travel as I needed, et cetera, to my different markets. And everything was going great. And then COVID hit, right? And in the fitness world, if you remember when COVID hit, it shut off overnight, right? And so I was working for a company.
Unless you're selling home gyms.
Exactly. And this was the public gyms, right?
Exactly.
Where people are paying, $40-$50 a month for membership. And if you recall, like there was federal mandates that now all those gyms had to return their membership fees, and they couldn't let people in. They had to close across the country. Yeah. And so that whole growth engine shut off overnight, and I no longer had a job. Right.
Wow.
And so now I'm sitting here without a job. My comfort level went from I'm so just coasting, right, to now what am I going to go do? And finally I was like, well, this is the shot I needed to go and do my own thing, right? And so I was so grateful for it, because it was the first time that I got let go, right?
Yeah.
My whole team, there was no more work for me to do. And so for the first 48 hours, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do, right? Yeah. And then I was like, let's roll, let's go, let's do this. And so
surprised it only took 2 days. That's pretty awome.
Well, I didn't have a lot of choice, right? I feel like I was kind of forced into figuring something out. Yeah. And so I was just like, all right, let's go do this. And so I started looking, and I was looking at properties to buy in Washington and Oregon and California, kind of thinking that I needed to go out of state in order to make a project that would really work. And then I had a friend who said, well, what about this one? And he threw me this deal here in Idaho Falls, and I started looking at it and started doing the numbers. I'm like, this one works way better than anything I was looking at, in these other states and other bigger markets, right? And so I started really pushing here in Idaho Falls and looking at this deal, and put it under contract. And then I'm like, well, if this one works, I'm going to keep looking. So I kept looking, and I ended up negotiating on a piece of property here in town that I thought would really work, and for multifamily project. And so we got that one under contract, and worked really well. I got my investment group together. So then we had all our equity, and what was nice again, as I started to look at that, because of my experience at Target and with Frank, and then with the private equity firm, I felt like I'd built enough of kind of all the skill sets within the different disciplines that you needed, from project implementation and creation and design, really all the way through construction, right? Until you're ready to turn it to a project management team, right? And so we just rolled and said, let's go and let's do this. So we took care of all the steps. We raised the equity. We got the project put together, all the operating agreements. We bought the land. We got the entitlements. I hired the GC. I hired the architect. Went through all the design. We got it built, and got it leased up. And then we were ready to hold it, and we were going through the process to convert to long-term debt. And my friend who I had asked to help us to find debt, he's like, well, would you ever entertain an offer to sell? And We're like, no, that's not what we built it for. And he said, well, this, would you at least look at an offer? This group, that is interested in the market. They have some 1031 money that they need to put into play. Anyway, long story short, they made an offer. It made a lot of sense. And I took it to my investment group, and they said, yeah, okay. So we ended up selling that, even though we'd built it for kind of the initial project was for a 30-year hold. We sold it. And so it was fun to see that one from really soup to nuts all the way through. And then that's enabled me to, go do other projects. And now we're, it's fun to be selective. Right? We're working on this one that I think is going to be a great one here in Rigby. Yeah. And we've started one in Shelley that is really fun. We're doing a 370 home subdivision in Shelley, and just got our first few homes sold this past month, which is really fun. So it's getting kicked off, and so it's been fun to look, as I look back at that and say, man, our market is amazing, and the growth that's happening here is, I think, when you get good developers who are trying to plan good projects, it just makes it fun to see the growth as it occurs. Yeah. I didn't, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I don't think I would have entertained, doing a residential subdivision in Shelley. That certainly wasn't in my, that's what we're going to go do. But as the opportunities come forth, you start to evaluate them. You're like, hey, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
we could make this a really cool project. And here's how it would make it a little different from the rest of the market. And here's what would make it really cool and why I'd want to live there. And so now when I go there and I look at our model home, I'm like, this home is awesome, right? And I'm like, I want to buy this one, right?
That was something that I thought was really cool. Is you go into working with developers, you go into these meetings, and they're like, how are we going to maximize density, maximize our profit? And the first thing, it was at first a little unnerving, because you're like, well, we're going to have to cut some of these back because I think we have way too much. And I think we're going to have to, and then anyway, the thought process behind that whole thing. And then as I get thinking about it, and I'm like, we don't want it to look like a lot of these other ones that when you drive through it, you think, man, what a mess. This was poor planning. And really it was just maximizing density probably. And so then the idea is I put myself 10 years from now of driving back, through there, maybe hopefully one of my kids living there or something. And I'm like, yeah, that would be, with these additions or these ideas, it would be a pretty sweet place to be. And so I love that you have that bigger picture, because if it's more desirable, then it's also going to bring more, to the bottom line or whatever.
I think so. I think if you design a project that you want to live in, right, and you're like, hey, I could see myself living there, right, and if you do it in that way, then I think the profits follow, right? Because I think the project ends up being...
And the value holds.
Holds, or it's better than what you thought. Yeah. I just think that that's so important to design it. Yes, you always have to have that balance, right? I mean, you have to have it make sense on, when you're financially, right? You can't just build the Taj Mahal, right? But I think that there's ways to, as you value engineer, you still have to have that concept in mind of, hey, we're building something that I want that I could see myself living at, that my wife or my kids would be super happy living here. And I think when you're making decisions with that in the back of your mind, then your project always ends up it's going to hold value.
What's some pitfalls that you see developers? I mean, just through your progression of your career, what is some pitfalls that you see them doing?
I think the biggest, I think first of all, there's risk in any project that you do in real estate development. And I think so you have to, be somewhat comfortable, right, with that risk. I remember the first time that had done a personal guarantee for over $1 million, and I was like losing sleep, right?
Yeah.
And then when we have to do one for $20 or $30 million, right, and your name is on the line, and I remember one of my friends saying, "Well, what does it matter if it's $5 million or $30 million? Either way, if your project fails, you're going to live in your parents' basement, right?" And so I'm like, "Yeah, that's true." So I guess, right? As long as again, you kind of think back to, well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, if I get knocked on my butt, right, then might take me a bit, but I'll get back on my feet, right?
Yeah.
And just that concept that when you have a good support network and a good support system, the worst isn't really that bad, right? I mean, it might be uncomfortable for a while, but you can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like real pitfalls that I've seen, I think when you're building a financial model for any type of project, I think it's important to be realistic at what those potential revenues really could be. Like if you're basing your financial model upon future appreciation that hasn't happened yet, to me that gets a little scary, right? And I'm not ever comfortable doing that. Like I feel like I'm pretty risk tolerant, but I think it's because when I do my own financial modeling, I don't do that. I don't let anybody else do it. I do it because I want to be very comfortable that the numbers are based in reality and not some sort of pie in the sky. Just because, if you're like, let's take a multifamily project, right? If rents have had a series of appreciations over the last few years, well, I'm not going to continue to bake in that rent growth into my numbers in order to make the project make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense today, if that doesn't happen, then you sink, right? You sink your ship. And I'm not willing to do that. And I always like to make sure that I have skin in every project that I do. I personally invest because I think it's important for anyone in my investment groups to recognize that too, that, oh, he's got skin in the game. Yep. He's equally vested, right? And any decision I make is not knowing that I have my own money in there, but I want everyone to be comfortable that I work with, knowing that I'm not going to make decisions as if it's monopoly money. It doesn't matter. Right? And it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I remember you saying that a little while ago. I can't remember what we were talking about, but you said I can't remember if it was someone you were working with or someone you had talked to or wanting you to come on board to help them, but they weren't wanting to put any of their own money in.
Red flag.
And you were just like, wait a second, it's not going to work. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, if I'm an investor, right, I certainly wouldn't want to put any money into a project where the key developer isn't equally yoked to the project from a financial standpoint. If they're just doing it for fee development, I'm not interested.
Yeah,
I've seen, and usually where I've seen it is actually on the private equity side, which guys doing that usually are typically very intelligent, really smart. But sometimes I think it's easier when it's not your money, so to speak, right? When you're making decisions that you can still go home and sleep at night regardless of what happens. So you take that risk. Because
that's back to what's the worst that could happen to them? It's not them, right?
Exactly.
They're playing with the house's money, and that's where, because I agree with that. And you go into deals and people are like, well, this is what I bring. And I'm like, so if this fails, you'll be sad. But if it fails for me, it's going to be bad, And so I love that.
Yeah, like the first project that I did, I was so focused and concerned and wanting to ensure that it was a good return for my investment group, so that they knew and they knew right from the beginning again that I'm lockstep with them and I have every bit as much to lose as they do. And the way I do my agreements too, I set it up so that I don't really, like some developers will set it up where they get a really high development fee on the front end, and so they're making money in the beginning before they've even sold anything or leased anything, and then they incentivize them. They set it up with that type of an incentive structure. Yeah. I'm the opposite. I set mine up so that I might make a little bit at front, but it's very, very little, just to quote unquote put bread on the table, right? But I only do well if my investors do well first, and that's how I like to set up all my.
So you're probably not even getting back out what you put into it. Not the first little bit. Not even close.
Yeah,
and then,
not even close.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, hey, maybe we'll stop here and then we'll bring you on again, and we'll stop for just a minute and take a little break. But yeah, thanks. I'm excited for what's next and what's coming up. So thanks. Come back and listen next week.